This is America and the World visits Greece. The official name of the country is the Hellenic Republic, and it's the cradle of Western civilization. It's the home of everything from democracy to philosophy, from antiquities to the Olympics. Most recently, Greece has struggled with its financial crisis and the refugee crisis. But Greece is also a modern, friendly, exciting, and lively country with Athens as its capital. Athens was the host city for the recent Concordia Europe Summit and home to the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center, which is a stunning piece of contemporary architecture, home for the arts, and a park for relaxation with a playground for children. On this program, we'll meet the founders of the Concordia Summit. We'll sit down with US Ambassador Geoffrey Pyatt to discuss Greece's recent struggles and the country's important relationship to the United States. And we'll also visit military installations at the Souda Bay Naval Base on the Island of Crete. First, the Cultural Center. It's called the SNF Cultural Center. What does that mean?
SNF stands for Stavros Niarchos Foundation. It is a foundation that actually made this possible, made this cultural center possible. But you can also call it the SNFCC for short. We officially opened in August 2016, mind you, a year earlier than we're supposed to because of the demand. And so we're still actually building certain areas. We are also hosting the Greek National Opera and the National Library of Greece, but they have not arrived fully yet here.
Aha! So we have an opera house.
Correct.
A library.
Correct.
And then a magnificent park.
Exactly, and that was the concept, to combine all these three elements in the same place.
And the design is kind of on a hill, but the hill wasn't here, huh?
No.
Tell me a little bit about that.
This actually was pretty flat as an area, and Renzo Piano, who is the leading architect of the firm that designed this complex, decided to actually create a hill. And part of the hill is from the dirt that was from the excavations and from here and other venues, but part of the hill is actually made of the buildings that are hosting also the park.
The Opera House, how many seats will be in the Opera House? We'll shoot that, I'm
We
sure.
have two different halls. The Stavros Niarchos Hall has 1,450 seats, and the alternative stage has 400 seats at its maximum capacity, but it has a versatility that allows it to be used in different ways, so seating capacity varies. We use all of our indoor and outdoor areas for a lot of activities. The whole idea is that now we are like three different organizations here. It's the opera, it's the library, and the SNFCC, the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center. We, as the SNFCC, have our own programming, thanks to a grant again by the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, which mandates that all of our events are actually open and free to the public.
People think of Athens, and people think of the great history here, the antiquities, and then all of a sudden, right in the middle of downtown Athens, is this very contemporary, very modern. So it's a wonderful contrast between old and new, huh?
Yes. Greece and Athens in particular, you always stumble upon history and you always stumble upon the past. But I think it's important to note how past, present, and future not only coexist, but kind of complement one another in the city.
Now, one important piece of information is that I guess it was this year, that the foundation gave the cultural center to Greece.
To the Greek state, to the Greek society, correct. This happened in February.
Well, that's remarkable, isn't it?
It is, and I think it's very indicative of the foundation's generosity, but also its mandate and its concept that this belongs to the Greek people. This is America and the World is brought to you by the Petrolin Group, expertise with integrity in the fields of oil and gas, exploration and production, energy and infrastructure. The Libra Group, the Stavros Niarchos Foundation,
John and Mary Papajohn. The American Hellenic Institute. The U.S. China Education Trust and F.Y. Chang Foundation, guided by Ambassador Julia Chang Block, President. The National Hellenic Society, preserving Hellenic heritage in America. Katerina Panagopoulos. The Barakis Foundation. The League of Arab States. The Rotendaro Family Trust. And the Embassy Series, uniting people through musical diplomacy, presenting international artists in diplomatic settings. Concordia, which means harmony, is the name of an exciting and successful organization that creates dialogues and partnerships between public and private leaders and organizations to confront the world's social challenges. Leaders of government, corporate, and non-profit organizations joined 800 delegates from across Europe at the summit. We spoke to Concordia's two founders. Tell the folks a little bit about the concept of the summit meeting, Concordia Summit. Go ahead.
I think a big part of it is bringing together a disparate community of people, an unlikely group of people, together to talk about some of the most intractable issues of our time. And to think about, in very pragmatic terms, right, what drives business, and what drives governments, and what drives the NGO and nonprofit sectors to do what they do, have an honest, open conversation about it. But Concordia is shifting. We're not just conveners now. We are a partnering organization. And so as an organization, if we can take that disparate community of people and turn it into collaboratives or partnerships, then we'll be happy.
Okay, but here we are in Greece, yes. Athens. Why Greece? Why now?
For us, it was important to do a summit in Europe. Yeah. Europe is a continent that has been in the news a lot recently, is very critical to the global economy, very critical to sort of everything that's going on in the world. And Greece for us is at the heart of Europe, even though it's had its share of crises over the past 8 or 9 years. We feel that this country really is at the border of Europe, but also at the center of Europe. And so it was something that we felt very important about, sort of felt that, you know, to do this in Paris or London would have been the easy choice, but Athens is somewhere that that we really wanted to hold our first Concordia Europe Summit. At Concordia, we try to do two things. We try to bring sort of decision makers and sort of high-level government and business leaders, but we also try to bring sort of mid-level people, entrepreneurs, people who are young, up-and-coming, energetic. And I think that is, in a sense, one of the things that separates us from other convening organizations.
We devised this format we call strategic dialogues. And so sitting at that table are heads of state, former heads of state, CEOs of multinational corporations, some of the leaders of the most innovative and interesting NGOs in the world. These are people who oftentimes are giving keynote addresses at places, but they're sitting at that table and all led by a very strong assembly chair, as we call it, or moderator of the strategic dialogue. And that's always a person who has the respect of everyone in the room, essentially, so that they can interrupt them, the different speakers, to stay on topic. It is not a place for speeches. It is a place for dialogue and discourse and conversation, and that oftentimes produces that unique output that I talked about a minute ago.
So here we are in Greece. What are the issues that we're talking about now?
So
Europe. It's a European summit.
It is a
right?
European summit.
What are the issues?
The three issues that we're talking about here, broadly speaking, are the future of Europe, the refugee crisis, and the Sustainable Development Goals. Lucky enough to have the President of Greece open the summit, and then the Prime Minister of Greece close the summit, and sort of also Vice President Biden and others.
I have nothing but admiration and congratulations
Thank you.
to offer you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Career Ambassador Geoffrey Pyatt, former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, is our U.S. Ambassador to Greece. We sat down together at the US Ambassador's residence, and I asked him about the historic and vital relationship between the United States and Greece.
In many ways, we just celebrated this week the 70th anniversary of Secretary Marshall's speech at Harvard and the Marshall Plan. And if you look back at the logic that President Truman, Secretary Marshall applied at that time, the strategic importance of Greece, the anchor of Europe, the vanguard of Europe, all of that's still true. This geography of this country is complicated. It is both part of the Eastern Mediterranean, also deeply part of Europe. It's the birthplace of our democratic values. Mm-hmm. So for all of those reasons, it's a very, very important relationship to the United States.
Do we have many common interests that go back and forth between the two countries?
Well, a lot. I mean, first of all, on the question of terrorism that's so important to our world today, Greece and the United States have a similar outlook. We have some of the same alliances, some of the same partners. Greece has a flourishing relationship with Israel, as of course we do in the United States. Greece, like the United States, is an advocate of making sure that Turkey remains anchored in Europe and European institutions. Greece also is a partner in hoping to see the countries of the Western Balkans continue in their Euro-Atlantic trajectory, moving towards European institutions, European values.
The location of Greece is critically important.
It is complicated and important. Mm-hmm. Complicated because we think about, we're all taught that Europe is a continent, mm-hmm. but it's really not.
Yeah, that's true.
It's part of this great Eurasian landmass.
Right.
So Greece is the place where the challenges of Eurasia collide with Europe, the Europe of values, of democracy, of freedom. And so its success in upholding those values and upholding those principles is important to the success of Europe as a whole. Mm-hmm. We see that dramatically illustrated through the refugee and migration crisis.
Yes.
You've had 1 million refugees and migrants pass through this country over a period of about 2 years.
We're going to take a trip to Souda Bay.
Excellent.
Talk a little bit about Souda Bay to the folks at home who might not know it even exists.
Right. So Souda, for European Command, for the US military in Europe, Souda is one of their most important platforms. It's a critical facility for supply and replenishment of American ships operating in the Eastern Mediterranean. So all of the missions that we've been flying against ISIS in Syria, for instance, all of those ships use Souda Bay as a replenishment and resupply point. It's also an important facility for our Air Force. It's right in the middle of that critical geography. But Souda is also extremely close to North Africa. And you really feel that when you get to Crete. And you realize you're just a couple hundred miles from the north coast of Africa. So all of the challenges that we worry about in places like Libya are also right next door. And most importantly of all, we have a very strong military alliance with Greece. Excellent cooperation between Greek and American military officers, sailors, pilots, army officers. And Souda is one of the places where that partnership happens.
The Souda Bay Naval Base in Crete is a shining example of the strategic cooperation between Greece and the United States. We had the unique opportunity to meet one-on-one with the commanding officers of both the Greek and American installations at Souda Bay, and we were on hand when the two met together. Souda Bay Naval Base, if you could just paint a broad picture of the base, how would you explain it?
Actually, it's a base that was constructed in 1952. It started the construction for the Hellenic Navy, and up to now it's an excellent base for the supporting of the Hellenic fleet, as well as for NATO navies that they are passing from here, that they operate in the Mediterranean. So it's a base in a strategic point, in an outstanding geographical position that gives support to our allies that they operate here.
So here on this base, Souda Bay, we have Greek Navy, Army, Air Force.
Exactly.
NATO operation as well, plus this huge US naval base.
Yes, it's a facility actually of the United States here in this area that can support the US and the NATO countries. And as I said before, we are in a closed operation. The Hellenic Navy, the Souda Bay Naval Base with our US colleagues for supporting our allies. So we are a community of, as you said, Army, Navy, Air Force, of the Hellenic Armed Forces, plus the United States NSA facility. The world today is a world that we have to be very cautious because there are various conflicts, and over these conflicts we have to be very careful about strategic movements and how we're going to make these strategic movements in order to support the balance and the peace in specific areas.
What an education it is for us to appreciate the vastness of the military commitment from the United States side and also from Greece, and the importance of our two countries working together. And I'm just thrilled to have had the opportunity to sit and talk with you.
Yes, it was a pleasure to talk to you also, and I will be glad also to talk together with our with my US colleague here in the NSA facility.
Wonderful.
This is Pier K-14. So as far as the operations we have going on in Souda Bay, talking naval support activities, Souda Bay at large, we have the airfield, which is on the top side, and now we're down at the pier part, which is a Hellenic-owned port, but all of our naval support activities that we do here come through this port here. So we've all heard the phrase, the tip of the spear. I consider ourselves the point right before the tip of that spear. The personnel, the ammunition, the food, the supplies, the aircraft, the engines, the parts, anything that's needed to support those people on the front lines, it can all flow through here. We're at this central crux between European Command, AFRICOM, and Central Command, and all of that logistical support and supply can flow through this important strategic geographic area to those people on the front line. So that's what support means in my opinion.
So the folks that you're supporting, they could be on the water, they could be in the sky, they could be on land, huh?
They are in all of those areas right now. We have support to ships. That's our port operations side of it. Whether it's, you know, refueling a ship here, bringing cargo to them, bringing mail, bringing personnel, whatever, anything they need. On the top side, we provide the same support to aircraft that flow through the base and then flow onto other areas as well. And we're constantly working with our Greek partners to make sure we provide the maximum level of support we can.
What is that sound in the background?
That is the sound of freedom, Dennis. That's the sound of a C-130, probably getting ready to pull chocks and head out of here, doing that support mission we already talked about.
A little while ago, we're standing in front of a ship. Now we're in an area where there are aircraft.
Exactly. What happened?
Tell me what we're doing here.
So
how do you describe this place?
How I describe this place is, so Naval Support Activities Souda Bay, we have lots of missions that go on at this base. So, so how I describe this to people is, take an aircraft carrier. If I show you a picture of an aircraft carrier, people know what that is. They've all seen Top Gun. There's aircraft going off there doing missions. They're doing anti-submarine warfare, they're doing anti-ship missions, whatever the carrier's missions are at that time. I'm just like that. You look around, your camera will look around, they'll see buildings, you'll see streets, you'll see all the other things that go into an installation, but I don't want you or the viewers to look at it like buildings and streets. I want you to look at it like an aircraft carrier, like a fighting platform, because that's what the Shore Installation Command brings to the Navy, to Greece, to project our power forward.
It's so great to be with you, and so thank you for the hospitality. And
I hope you enjoyed your time on the base.
Absolutely.
And in Greece.
Terrific.
Right. Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you,
All right.
Captain. Probably most folks back home are aware of the financial crisis and the refugee crisis. Greece has been somewhat heroic in handling both, don't you think?
Yeah, well, it's worth thinking about them as sort of sequential crises. The financial crisis, Greece has now been living through almost 8 years of economic crisis. And it has had the most difficult time of any of the Eurozone countries in emerging from that crisis period. Then you've got the refugee crisis, which came on top of that. And I think one of the things that's most impressive to me is that even amid all of this national difficulty from the economic situation, the Greek people offered tremendous hospitality to these refugees who came from as far away as Pakistan, Afghanistan, Eastern Africa. Greece has been a strong NATO ally for decades. It's one of the few countries that has fought with the United States in almost every major conflict since the Second World War. It fulfills its NATO obligation of committing 2% of GDP to national defense. It's also highly competent, and consistently, when America calls and asks for help, the answer from Greece and the Greek people is yes.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for your
Thanks,
time.
Dennis.
Thank you for your hospitality.
Thanks for coming by.
Thank you for your service.
I appreciate that. Thanks a lot.
George Logothetis, the chairman and CEO of the Libra Group, and a featured speaker at the Concordia Summit, is passionate about Greece and the Greek people, and rightly so.
The brand of Greekness has been depreciated these last 9 years.
Yes.
I bet you if you were to take a survey of 10 people across the world and ask them, what do you think about Greece and the Greeks, it wouldn't be positive.
Yeah.
But the paradox is, there is extreme positivity here. People have been struggling. People have learned how to create something out of nothing. People are fighting. You have a Western European expectation of life married to a more Balkan reality. You have a 50% unemployment rate of young people. You have 23% total unemployment in the country, and a pervasive sense of hopelessness after 9 years of crisis. Everything gets lost in the bond yields, the IMF, the hedge fund. But there's people suffering here. There's a pervasive lack of hope that tomorrow can be better than today or yesterday even. Yet, society overall has stayed together. The fabric of Greek society has been beaten down, but you don't have, rioting in the streets. You don't have people at each other's throats. The social fabric overall has stayed together, which is a testament to the strength of the Greek people, ultimately. I think courage is embedded in the blood of the Greeks. There's no doubt about that. At the same point in time, as I said before, there are many, many good and great people that are fighting every minute of every day here that do not get the oxygen of recognition. We see it and we hear it all the time. How do you live off 800 euros a month whilst working 16 hours a day? But at the same point in time, the spirit of the country has taken a 9-year beating. And that cannot be ignored. And there's been a triple whammy here in Greece. You have the social crisis, you have the economic crisis, and you have the refugee crisis. So the suffering that human beings are enduring here is terrible. And the Greek state is dealing with multiple crises at the same time. And great crises breed greatness as well. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you very much.
A special thanks to Hotel Grand Bretagne, a luxury collection hotel, Athens. For information about This Is America and the World, and to watch all of our programs, visit our website, thisisamerica.net, and look for us on Facebook and Twitter. You can now listen to all of our ambassador interviews on our new podcast, the Ambassador Series. It's available on our website and iTunes. This is America and the World is brought to you by the Petrolin Group, expertise with integrity in the fields of oil and gas exploration and production, energy and infrastructure. The Libra Group, the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, John and Mary Papajohn, the American Hellenic Institute, the U.S. China Education Trust and F.Y. Chang Foundation, guided by Ambassador Julia Chang Block, President. The National Hellenic Society, preserving Hellenic heritage in America. Katerina Panagopoulos. The Barakis Foundation. The League of Arab States. The Rotendaro Family Trust. And the Embassy Series, uniting people through musical diplomacy, presenting international artists in diplomatic settings.